Well, good afternoon. Again, we're here with the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative Forum today. We're going to be talking about medical marijuana here in Florida, but we're also going to talk about the unlawful side and the unlawful use. We have some great students here with us today. We have a great panel with us here today. We're just going to have a conversation. So we're set up just to have a real meaningful conversation. Get comfortable. If you have any concerns about safety and our conversation, just know that we're all family here today, and we're going to ask questions and share some opinions, but hopefully most of all that we can share some facts and we can provide some relevant updates on what we think is coming down the pipe in terms of a Supreme Court decision recently which will allow the use of recreational marijuana to be on the November ballot. So that is a hot topic, and we look forward to getting into that topic today. And we're so happy that we have a nice table of participants here today with us. So I want to introduce to you Executive Director, G.P. Mendy. Give him a few words, opportunity to speak, and then my colleague sitting next to me, Anthony Washington, who is a statewide coordinator. We also have Dr. Shamiriel Robertson, and we'll hear from her as well. So I say let's get started, and let's dig in, panel.
Thank you, everyone. I'm G.P. Mendy. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this very informative session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Robertson. Welcome to this amazing conversation. We're going to talk about the legalization again, like Michelle said, of marijuana in the state of Florida. And we will give a chance to provide an opportunity for students to really speak about their thoughts on this and answer any questions that they may have. So I think to really start this conversation out, what we need to really do is talk about what we know about the fall and what's happening related to recreational marijuana. So this is going to be interactive. Is it legal right now for recreational use of marijuana in Florida?
Dr. Robertson, before we get started, I apologize. We do have some panel guests who are appearing virtually, and I did not give them an opportunity to be recognized. You're on, sir.
Oh, it's me. Hello, my name is Ron Washington. I'm the CEO of Ethos Cannabis, a multi-state vertically integrated cannabis company. Native Floridian. Unfortunately, I don't have any businesses in Florida, but somewhat of an expert, I guess, on the industry and its own.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
We have another.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm David Kennedy. I am Kennedy and Associates. We're a corporate law firm, and we specialize in cannabis and the business of cannabis. I represent clients in multiple states: California, Florida, New York, New Jersey, the DMV, a couple of other states as well in cannabis and non-THC Delta 9 companies as well, and also some companies outside the country as well.
Okay, well, thank you again. We're so happy to have you virtually join the conversation. I know that you're going to add some very relevant information as we discuss this very convoluted topic, perhaps. So we're going to start out with Dr. Robertson, and she's going to ask some questions, and just feel free to chime in, jump in, raise your hand if you want to continue on a point, or if you have a question that may come as a result of another question or a thought that you'd like to share. We welcome the participation.
Yes, so the first question that we're diving into is it legal right now for recreational use of marijuana in the state of Florida?
I don't think so.
Is it legal?
I don't think so.
No, the answer is no. That's the go ahead.
That's the attorney.
In the way that the question was
In
phrased,
a lot of places, but it's not
yeah,
legal. It's been decriminalized in a lot of places, but not legal.
yeah, the way that the question is phrased, the answer is no. In Florida, it's for recreational purposes. However, there have been municipalities and counties who are engaged in, as Mr. Washington was saying, the decriminalization portion, which surrounds sending folks to community-based programs if they're picked up with cannabis. They're not prosecuting, they're changing charges, they're doing things of that nature, but that doesn't mean that it's legal and recreational adult use.
Okay, so with that, there was a Supreme Court ruling. Can one of our panelists talk about what was that ruling and what's happening in the fall in the state of Florida related to marijuana?
And I gave you a hint in my opening comments. Oh, and I did come with prizes today.
No, I don't want to bogart the conversation, so I'm just gonna.
Go ahead, David. You're the attorney, so go ahead.
Yeah, come on, attorney, let me have it.
We'll do some questions at the end for the students.
So my understanding of what you're talking about is the ballot initiative that allows for recreational cannabis to be on the constitutional ballot, or excuse me, the ballot for elections in the state of Florida, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, so what a lot of folks don't understand, or what I want folks to understand coming from this, is that the only reason that we got medical marijuana when we received medical marijuana in Florida is because of a ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Ballot initiative, which was initially pushed by John Morgan, the owner, and that's because of how his family was positively affected by the use of marijuana. And in 2015 and 16, when the citizenry were pushing for the medical use because of children having medical issues. It's going to go through the same process. When I was in law school, I went to FSU for law school right down the street. My senior thesis essentially was on the United States Constitution versus state constitutions. And the way to get things passed like this would be from constitutional provisions that would allow for recreational marijuana to go into effect, which would force the government to create adult use or recreational use parameters and regulations surrounding that use starting the following year, July 1st of 2025. Historically, we failed the first time. We went out prior to 2015, the first ballot initiative, but the second ballot initiative won for medical marijuana. So we'll see what the citizens of Florida will do once that is on the ballot.
There's a lot of misconception about who will be able to sell, what it means. We talked about a lot yesterday that currently in Florida, there are 22 medical marijuana treatment centers. And for the students in the room, we talked about they grow, they process, and they dispense. It is what's called vertical integration in Florida, which is a lot different from a lot of other states. In some states, people can apply to just dispense, to sell it. For example, in some states, people just grow. That is not allowed in Florida. So some people have a misconception and they think when recreational marijuana, when it's voted on the ballot, that right away they will be able to sell, to grow at home, and people that are selling weed maybe illegally now will be able to just go into this business. Can you talk about what's going to happen and the regulation on it and how it might look?
Let me give a little color to the conversation, just a little bit. He gave very technical responses there. Do you want to kind of tell the difference between a ballot initiative and a constitutional amendment? Because there's a difference there in terms of what becomes actual law down the fact. And the one thing is in terms of Morgan & Morgan pushed it and whether it's public knowledge or not, they own about 4 or 5 of these licenses, directly or indirectly. So they were very intentional about wanting to make sure that was getting done. And then the last piece, since I'm a resident of Florida, and the vertical integration piece that she just brought up is very important, because the industry is not built in Florida for people of color. That's the reason why our company is looking to get down there. They have done things to allow themselves to scale up that in other states cannabis is not allowed to do. Trulieve is your perfect example. There's 135, I think, stores in the state of Florida for Trulieve. They only have like 180 stores in the country. What they've done there is create the monopoly that I think all need to be aware of and be loud and vocal on. That this initiative, although it sounds great, is going to give them more runway and more of a head start than they currently have right now.
Well, I would say, to piggyback on what you're saying, Mr. Washington, that any company that is set up in Florida to be vertically integrated rather than a horizontal integration, which you're talking about, or which is the opposite, which happens in, let's say, Maryland or Virginia currently, it does allow for them to get to the adult use space easier. I guarantee you, when they put this in effect, there will be a pathway for people with licenses to get in position. Forget easier first, then, and people have applications out there to go in first, and then everybody will be second. What Mr. Washington said also is very important. It's not easy for Black people to get involved in this industry. Now, the difference between that I've noticed in the industry in Florida is that a year ago, people were selling a paper license for $100,000, $100 million, $200 million. Now, because they see certain trends, they're trying to offload them for $60 million or $90 million, which shows the change in the market. But how many Black people do you know that have $60 million sitting around? In fact, my company was a part of getting the Bickford license, which was considered, or is considered, the Black cannabis license in the hands of the current recipient of that license. And we are a part of that group, but that's only like 1 or 2 Black people who are involved in a required license, the 22nd license, to go to in a Black person. So Mr. Washington is correct in saying that there are extreme barriers in the way of having Black folks obtain licenses in this country. Excuse me, in this state.
So, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, some of the barriers with, Black people being able to actually own these licenses, right? And how, some of the licenses that are currently operational was a result of lawsuits and settlements for people to get these licenses, and, the amount of money that it takes for an application that's non-refundable, and the amount of money that it takes to actually operate. Because as a part, I previously served as a Deputy Secretary for Health. The Office of Medical Marijuana was under my direction, so the person running that office reported to me. And so, during my tenure there, that's when they worked on the PIP language for the applications, and that's when edibles, that was allowed during my tenure at the department. So there are a lot of different things that you see on the regulatory side of it, and there are a lot of things that you see on the industry side. I now serve as the Executive Director of the Florida Medical Marijuana Trade Association. And what that group is it's a group of operators, current operators, that operate medical marijuana treatment centers, and they get together, talk about different common issues, work together to ensure safety, etc. And we started a few months ago with that consorted trade association, and we're working together. And then today, what I want you to understand is have a better understanding. So even though a lot of the conversation is really focused on who owns the market, but there are other ways for you to get in the industry, right? There are medical marijuana labs, for example. That's a whole nother industry that people often don't talk about, how to become a medical marijuana treatment center testing lab. Every batch of product that leaves those medical marijuana treatment centers, they sample those, they get that certificate of approval for them to go to the streets. those products should not be released on the streets. By law, they can't be released on the streets if they haven't had the appropriate sampling out of the batch and it's approved. While they're waiting on the certificates to come back from the labs, the product is just sitting in storage, and then they'll have whether or not it's waiting, and if it's been approved to ship out to stores, they'll move it that way. So for example, if a set of products are recalled because of mold, so if you are in different majors here at the university, you can really start to, if this is an area of interest, think about your place in the market, right? What this means. So to our panel, I'm gonna ask, with the potential for recreational marijuana, what are implications for the industry, for students, for jobs? What do you think?
I think transportation, hopefully if they loosen up some of the vertical aspects of it and allow, I think for transportation, I've seen a lot of success in some of the states that I operate in, and a lot of minorities being able to start businesses and getting their foothold in there. I think the largest opportunity, I think, is what you said, is us getting into the scientific aspect of it. There's a lot of money in the scientific testing and having a lab. We pay a lot of money to get every batch, like she says, tested, and depending on what state you're in. So I think getting into the scientific aspect, and then I think on the cultivation side, and understanding what are some of the supplies and the supply chain aspects that goes into building a cultivation, maintaining a cultivation, and how can your skill sets apply to risk management, quality assurance practices, and things of that nature. But there are a lot of sub-industries that would just be naturally created over the next 12 to 18 months. It's all really going to be about what they're going to allow in the initiative and how much sub-industries they're going to allow to happen. A lot of states allow for a lot of sub-industries to evolve. We'll see what Florida does in the next few months.
And then the other thing too, some people, they think that it's gonna mirror like other things. When you're 18, you can go and buy tobacco. Can you speak to the age potential impacts of legalization of marijuana? Is it gonna be 18? Are they saying another age? What are we hearing about that?
In here at 21, and then there's also the issue of taxes. So you're gonna have, and what we call taxes, and not to speak technically, because you're right, Mr. Washington, sometimes I get in that lawyer technical bag.
But no, it's good. 280E is a bad word. They need to know it. 280E.
You're good. You're going to have potency taxes. You're going to have municipal taxes. You're going to have state taxes. You're going to have county taxes. All these taxes are going to be taxed on the particular pack that you buy. And if you buy a vape versus a pre-roll, if you buy flour, and when it becomes federal, there'll be a federal tax. There'll be a bunch of stuff that's going to happen, especially with regards to taxes. And I deal with a lot of that with my clients, which is one of the reasons I'm bringing that up. Now, to piggyback what Mr. Washington said, and what you were talking about as well regarding opportunities, I think that whenever one talks about cannabis, right, it feels like we're talking about the flower itself. Yeah, the flower is cool, but it's the industry. When I mentor and talk to kids and they want to be football players and basketball players, or they want to be rappers, what I tell them, and the same thing I would say about the cannabis industry, is like, it's great to be an MC in front of the mic. It's even great to be a producer or something, right? But what about L.A. Reid? L.A. Reid used to be in a band with Babyface. They own the Face Records together. What about owning pieces of the company? And then he becomes an A&R. He's no longer singing and performing with Babyface, right? He is now in an ancillary part of the industry that doesn't touch the microphone. So analogous or similar to the cannabis industry, you have to find other entry points when the economy or a particular state like Florida, where the barrier of entry is so high to get into in the touching the plant phase, where you can then get into it on a lower barrier of entry, which may still cost $50,000, $100,000, even $10,000, money that you may not have. But it's a different barrier of entry using your skills and opportunities in business, in mentors, and in networking or whatever it is, to get in there and then eventually get to where you want. I do believe that cultivation is excellent points. I've read many articles on believing that cannabis is an agricultural boom for the South that we haven't seen since tobacco, and I truly believe that that's what it's going to be, not only for the state but for Black folks in this state.
And I agree. So when talking about cultivation, FAMU is a land grant school, right? The school is more than just a name of, saying the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. Like, we really need to get back to, where we started, agriculture. You cannot operate in the cannabis space without having the experts on agriculture, right? So when you go in there, I've been to multiple medical marijuana treatment centers, right? And the difference between their flower, it is so different. Like I went to more than one in one day and everybody was like, oh, look, my flowers are beautiful. Look at the plants, and then I went to another one and I'm like, this one is leaps and bounds over this one. So the science behind growing cannabis, it is there. And one of the areas that, we are not really involved in Florida, which I've seen this market really boom in California, is the concept of agrovoltaics with growing cannabis flower using solar panels. And I actually talked to one of the farmers, a Black farmer out of California, who's done very, very well with agrovoltaics and solar panels and growing cannabis and leveraging that type of technology, because you can control the sun, you can control different things. So if you're being super technical about it with these medical marijuana treatment centers, most of the very affluent companies in the state of Florida, they have, if you can imagine, like rows and rows and miles of inside greenhouses, if you will. Like if you're thinking about marijuana, they're not like sitting these plants outside in a bucket and they're not growing. It doesn't work like that. That's what they're talking about, the science of cultivation. Like they have very sophisticated technology. So if you are an engineer, making sure you understand how to optimize the growth of plants. They're playing with the lights, how much light, when. Some of the inside greenhouses, if you will, they have them, pretending that it's nighttime and it's in the middle of the day. They have fans that blow just right at a certain angle. They check the oxygen. People are all dressed up. Some of the rooms, people rarely go into them at a certain point in cultivation because they don't want to contaminate the plants, but just understanding how to maximize the growth of these plants, which is what you learn in a lot of the agricultural majors here at the school, just understanding how business practices work. You cannot get a license in this state if you don't have a business plan. I can tell you based on experience from talking to the team, a lot of things when they reviewed the applications for MMTCs, some people had the means and the assets, but they simply did not have a tight business plan, and it's a no-go. You can have the means, you can meet the qualifications, you can pay the money, but if you have a plan that's unrealistic to go to market, you have a certain amount of time from when they grant you a license to dispense the product. That wasn't always the case in Florida. There are some licenses that are still not operational. They're not dispensing products to the public. You can't do that currently because they change what's called an administrative rule at a certain point to force people, once they got the license, to go to market in a certain amount of days. But there are some licenses in Florida, they are not operational like you see with, for example, a True Leave or a Move or a company not like that. So I think at this time I'm going to open the floor to our students to see some of the questions you may have about this, because it's a complicated topic, but want to talk about implications.
Can I hop in real quick, because I want to
Yeah.
piggyback something that you said. You are 100% correct. There are licenses throughout this state that are not operational. And what you're suggesting, which I do like that the government did, is they essentially did what you have to do with alcohol licenses. Once you get them, you got to put it on the street. You can't hold on to them. Even if your purpose is to flip it and make money on it, you got to do something with it, essentially, or they just don't want it to sit. So it's very important for anyone who obtains the license to do that, which is also part of the reason why the price, the secondary market price has gone down on the 100 million, 200 million for a license, down to about 60 or 90 million dollars because they want to recoup that money on. This is a conversation about business. This isn't just a conversation about some of the other things that we speak about during or while we're at FAMU and we're on various panels. So while you're asking the questions to any of us, students, anyone else who's there, please ask questions and inquire about the business of cannabis. Because the business of cannabis, in my opinion, is what's going to drive not only the black dollar and the southern dollar, but the Floridian dollar, and keep the intelligence, the things that you learn at FAMU in the community. So as you grow and as you move on in your career, you can always come back to people that you graduated with to understand and also gain that knowledge with and from them.
Hello, I have a student that just arrived and she's joined our panel. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. She's very interested in this panel and a leader at the university, and so I'm giving her this opportunity to make sure she can ask all of the questions that she's come to the table with, but also to recognize her participation today.
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Riley. I am a second-year Health Informatics and Information Management scholar from Jacksonville, Florida. And I am, like she said, very interested in this topic. And one of the first questions I had was, what do you feel like are the first steps to getting into like the industry? Like, what would be like the first steps of getting involved?
So,
Yep.
Let me take a first stab just because she said Jacksonville, Florida, so I have to do it because I'm from there as well. So the entry points, I think, in this industry, and I'll speak from just my personal biases, you guys are FAMU. You guys are an agricultural school. I would love to see more of you all really dig into the agricultural aspect of this industry. It's very lucrative. The guys who run my grows, the head cultivation guy makes well over $250,000. The guy who runs production makes over $200,000. They're all white. We have a serious gap in this industry of people who are going to take the time to learn the science of the plant. So whether that's your health information, I think that's what you said your major was, I would figure out from the cultivation side, that's where the real money is. How can you make yourself value to an organization? How can you put more brown and black faces, especially coming out of FAMU? We need more of you all in this industry. We just don't exist. Unfortunately, I'm the only black CEO of a multi-state cannabis company in the country. Why is that when this is our industry? Why are there no big black cultivators across the country? We have to figure out that, and I think that is our angle. That should be our strength, is we do know how to farm in the South. We do understand plants. We do understand all of these things that this industry needs. So I would tell you all to look at anything in cultivation and figure out your pathway there, and that is where I think your biggest return on your investment is going to be.
I'm going to piggyback Mr. Washington and say cultivation, I think, is a big deal. And my reason for saying cultivation is a big deal, and this isn't answering your question, because I have a different answer to your question, but I'm going to piggyback on them as an entry point because I think it's huge. Because we right now are in a part of society where we love branding, we love dispensaries, we love things like that. The sexy part of it is what I would say. I mean, that's cool. Like the Flowery in Jacksonville, in fact, partnered with Viola, who's I've done some work with, and they're a client of mine. And they own or they partner with a strain. So Viola has their Iverson strain coming out of there, and a couple other strains as well. I think they partner with Mulberry too, doing a couple other things. But that's cool. But the foundation is the you don't get to the store until you grow the plant, and that's extremely important. And branding's cool too, but my thesis in life is wherever you see someone go the opposite direction. Find a different pathway. Do it differently. I'm black. I got a lacrosse scholarship to college. You know why? Because all my friends were playing basketball and football. I ran track too. But I knew I wasn't going to go to college, and my parents told me, that you need to figure out a way to play to get yourself into college. And Dave Chappelle in the stand-up, Chris Stark in stand-up said they learn how to dribble a ball or entertain these people in some way. And I was like, you know what? It's not going to be basketball or football. Let me try this CrossFit. So it's in business, find a different pathway than everyone's going. Right now, it's a branding in dispensaries. But in my opinion, it is the science and cultivation. Now, for you as a young individual, if you do not have access to a lot of money, my suggestion would be the first thing to do is to network your face off while you're in college. Part of the reason I would say that is because when you're in college, you're non-intimidating to companies. You're not a competitor. You're not trying to find a foothold in the market. At least that's what they think. So they're willing to give you free information. And that free information can help you find your original pathway into the industry or get to the industry from a science perspective, a business perspective. It could push you towards your graduate degree, which could be an MBA. It could be in law. It could be in the medical field. It could be in multitude of areas as you matriculate through your college and post-college years. So I would say network like crazy for number one, so you can figure out where your talents best fit.
And when they say network, because I know you hear that term all the time, and I'm a college professor too, but I really find value in talking about what that means, right? Like, what are we talking about when we say networking? Where you get exposure to a lot of people having events, giving away food, people come, companies come, but your network is your net worth, meaning when you see somebody and you meet them, hi, nice to meet them. That's great, that's cool. You should be getting their phone number, you should be getting their email address, and it should not stop there, right? You should send them a message. It was so nice to meet you again. I'm, Anthony Taylor from the FAMU. I want to learn more about this market. Can we set up a time so I can talk a little bit about what you do? Like, I know that sounds like a lot, but I'm telling you, that is the difference between, people remembering your name and going far. Like, when I'm looking at people, I led the COVID response in part with the state surgeon general. It was a student who reached out to me from Texas. She said, hey, you're one of the only black women that's leading the COVID responses as an epidemiologist. Will you be my mentor? She was like a junior in college, a public health degree. And I was like, you know what? If you found me on Facebook and you took the second to keep trying to contact me, I was the Deputy Secretary for Health. She was that bold and she was that determined. She was like, can I set up some time and talk to you? I was extremely busy, but you know what? Because she went that extra mile to network, I did it. And she kept up with me about once a month. Hey, just checking in. I see you on TV. I know you're super busy. But she kept checking up when it was time. I never met this girl a day in my life face to face, but her networking ability, when she went to grad school, she said, can you write me a letter? I did. She got into grad school. She recently finished her master's. Now she's working at the health department in Houston. She called me back. Can I use you for a reference again? But she's kept up the networking. So what I'll tell you is that it's not bugging people. Keep those relationships, save them in your phone, come back to them, figure out how they can help you. Especially, we talked about having $60 million. Most of the families that we have, they don't have that kind of money. So you're not going up to buy a license. Hey, at 22, I'm not here. You're not going to be able to buy a license for $60 million. But what you can do is, there is a big hole in the market in research. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm telling you, they're telling you, cultivation, research, understanding the trends, understanding the educational aspect, understanding the types of products that people want to see, understanding outreach, marketing trends, what people want to buy. It is an entire science, right? What I've heard the industry, leadership, C-suite say over and over in the last year or so is, we want more research, right? People hear the conversations, they know that, there's much work to be done with multicultural populations, black populations, understanding what it is that people want to see. And at the same time, if you're gonna be a consumer and you're gonna buy these products, you need to be able to be in on the other side. You need to be able to understand how to invest. You need to be able to understand businesses. They have the sales systems that track the plant from start until finish, you know. And then one thing that we talked about yesterday is really challenging the industry, like really holding the industry accountable, right? So we talk about understanding this, but we got to figure out a way to get y'all into a MMTC so that y'all can actually see it. They're close to Tallahassee. We have some right over in Gaston County, Madison County, for example, to get y'all into those houses, to be able to walk through, to see how they're growing it. It's right in our backyard, but having this land grant school, I feel like students should have the opportunity to see that, to see the kitchens. We didn't talk about this today, but if you have a degree in food science, it's a big deal because they're cooking brownies, they're making gummies, like there's a science. They're not in there whipping up something with no recipe. They whipping up something that's real scientific, and they're using titration to make sure that it is gonna be just right, because once you cook a brownie, you can't undo that. So that needs to be on the money from a science standpoint. There's some other products that they make, and if it don't quite work out, they can fix it and retry it again. But in that food science aspect, those things have to be on point. Otherwise, you could lose, you know, some of your profit on that crop because you have to throw away a batch when the lab come back and say, these brownies don't quite make it, right? So we're gonna turn it back over. I know the student had more questions.
I wanted to add something to that before you continue.
Yes, sir.
Gibran and David, you guys still there? Can you hear me?
I'm here.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a bold statement to both of you and see if you agree with me. Piggybacking on what Shamil has just said, if any of these students reach out to you, Gibran, and say, hey, I'm thinking about an internship. Yes, I'm not an agro major, but I'd like to learn logistics. Can you take me in? Gibran, what would you say?
You already know my answer, GP. The answer is, if you reach out to me, I'm going to say, I'm going to talk to you, and we'll see how we can work together to help reach your goal of what you want to do within your career, especially within the cannabis industry. I don't turn students away because I've been a student in that position, and I've been turned away. I've had positive effects. I've had people not reach back out to me. I've done all of them. Like, the network is your network in many ways. But I have personally been, I would personally say that you need to not only go and send an email, make a phone call, if they're interested, you know someone's interested and you follow them on Instagram, see where they're at, see if you can go see them. Go to things like MJ Biz, go to things that will help push you and your network further. But then do what Charlemagne says and have a DJ Khaled level of annoyance. Because when he wants somebody on the track, he is ruthless. He will come to where you are at. He will show up to where you're at. Obviously, I would do it respectfully in your end, because you need to. You want to get their attention. You want to show them that you're serious. And to be honest with you, I've never had a job that I haven't had a contact in. I've never walked through the front door. The only job I've ever walked through the front door was my first job ever at Marshall's when I was like 16 years old. Every other job, I knew somebody that worked in me in something to get me in, to put my name at further at the top of the list. But I'll definitely take the opportunity to speak to any student that speaks to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Gibran, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Jokingly, I guess I would say, I won't respond if you call me Gibran. If you call me Jabron, though, I will definitely respond to you and give you all the attention that you may need. But seriously, guys, I think the big thing about networking is following up and following through. So if you do reach out to people in the C-suite, people like me, who get tons of emails, tons of requests for meetings and things of that nature. Be very specific about what you're asking for, to grab someone like mine's attention. Show that you've done some research. You understand that, I'm not going to have to spend 15 minutes explaining to you about the industry, that you've done your research and you've come prepared to the conversation. That will get people's attention, especially at the C-suite level. Similar to, what the lawyer has just said as well, is if you don't put yourself out up front, if you don't, closed mouths don't get fed, they always told us in our communities, right? It's the same thing in business, the same thing in life. If you don't speak up and speak out and show out for yourself, then you will never have these kind of opportunities. I've pushed the envelope for every job that I got. I forced the one that I'm in now, and just kind of made people see me for what I can do and what I can be. So I just ask you all to do the same thing with us. When you're reaching out, it's like, here's what I am, here's what I do, here's what I know about what you do. Let's start the conversation there. But definitely, too much was given, much is expected. So my mother raised me right. So if y'all reach out, I'm here for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm a piggybacker of Mr. Washington. You can take points in my head, but it's extremely important for you to have a specific ask. So just real quick, 30 seconds of my background. I come from the DMV, so I come from the DC area. I worked in the White House under Obama. I worked in the U.S. Senate under Senator Burris. I worked when I was in school in Tallahassee. I worked for Justice Quince in the Florida Supreme Court. I worked for Governor Scott in his budget and policy. One of the things that we learned in DC when I was working on the Hill is you need to be tight. You need to be tight with your ads. You need to be tight with your email. You need to be tight with your resume. They don't want to see any misspelled words. They don't want to see commas in the wrong place, because they'll move that email, that letter, that whatever to the side. We're obviously not, we're going to give you a little more grace when you reach out. However, we are busy with family and professional and other obligations. So when someone reaches out, if they don't pique our interest, then just like you see in any other industry, it may go to the side. But as much is given, much is required, and we will give, but we want to give to people that show that they've done the work before coming to us. Don't come to us half-assed. Come to us knowing what you want, and knowing that if we don't know it, we can put somebody else in position to help you out.
Well said. Well said.
Very well said. And I say this
Both of you, well said.
all the time to students, like, you have to come dressed for the part, you have to speak the part, you have to be tight up and down, knowing what you're doing. I recently had, some people are first generation college students. You may not have seen it done before, but this is an opportunity for you to learn. If you have a resume and you come with misspelled words, I had a student who recently applied for an internship, first generation college student, and she missed the interview. And if it was another company, they probably wouldn't have given her another opportunity. We had a conversation, we talked about it. Because she is a first generation college student like myself, I'm still gonna take her, and we're gonna train her very well. But there are a lot of different soft skills that we need to clean up. You cannot show up to an interview in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. That is not it. And I'm telling you, you have to make sure that you are the total package up and down, and no different than what I tell my students, my internees, and my own children and my family members. So we will open it back up to Taylor with questions.
So the next question that I had was based off of Delta 8, THCA, and Delta 9 components coming from THC. I wanted to know what makes those legal versus the other derivatives that are illegal currently in Florida.
I guess I'll start off with the answer to that question. So the thing that's illegal is Delta 9. That is the Schedule 1 drug, THC Delta 9. When the Farm Bill passed, and Mr. Washington, anybody up there, correct me in the year, I believe it was 2017, but I could be wrong.
2018 Farm Bill, 2018.
Thank you so much. When the
Rope not dope was supposed to be for. Rope not dope, Senator McConnell said.
When that bill came out, what it said was that it can't be over 0.3% THC content, Delta 9 THC content, and then ultimately the product can be sold. Now, let's say specifically a Delta 8. Delta 8 has been researched for a long time. Delta 8 has been researched since like the 70s and the 60s. And the reason why research on these derivative THCs have been around much longer than the original Delta 9 is because it was a Schedule I drugs. I know doctors in California, doctors in Colorado, doctors throughout this entire country that until they loosened up some of the regulations around researching Delta 9, literally doctors, the industry, didn't know about it. Hospitals had to literally have special access to even get the product, or excuse me, get the flower, but then it wasn't really for research purposes. It was for other purposes, and they had to tell the government about it. So the difference between, there are differences, scientific differences, that I'm sure that Mr. Washington could speak to, but from a legal perspective, that's like the base reason why you can mess with a Delta 10, a CBG, a Delta 8, any of these what can be considered exotic THC products, and they're not illegal. You can sell them commercially and have them on your person. And I would suggest not smoking and driving or engaging in driving, because that could be a DWI, DUI in the state. As a former prosecutor, I'll tell you that people get arrested for it, which is a whole other subject. But from the commercialization perspective, you can engage in those, and that is the main difference.
So I'm gonna ask. I know Gibran said I pronounced his name wrong, so he's gonna send a check to FAMU for me pronouncing his name wrong. So, but having said that, we've talked about marijuana and the business side of it.
Hold on, just for a second before we get confused about Delta 8, because Delta 8 it was the farm bill. So what he's talking about is the 0.3%, and what is the dry weight is what has to be 0.3%. The loophole that they didn't close was that you can grow a field of, let's say, 1,000 plants. All of them have 0.3% THC in them. When you process them, meaning that you take them from their original plant form, now you have liquid THC. When you add all of that up, now all of a sudden you can put 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, and all that stuff in these beverages, because it was just the dry weight that was written in the farm bill. Now, McConnell was very specific. It was supposed to be just for hemp products and for products for textile industry and stuff like this. So the industry that's been created, being on the other side of the industry, it's not regulated. So I would stay away from it as young people. They don't have the same amount of regulations that we have and testing that we have. Depending on the company, it's all due to them. So as young people, I would stay away from any of that stuff. Get it from a medical tested facility, especially in Florida, and go that route as you guys are moving through this piece.
Thank you for mentioning that. Hey, David, I just want to follow up on what my original thought, and both of you can react to it. So we've talked about the business of cannabis. The Farm Bill, made hemp legal, but we don't talk about the possibilities that are available when it comes to hemp. Just wondering if you guys want to talk about that and see if there are opportunities. And I know we're talking about the illegal side of it, but there's lots of opportunities and possibilities, especially when we talk about the industrialization of hemp. Can you talk about that briefly?
Mr. Washington, I'd love for you to talk first. I'm going to talk from a client perspective, but I'd love for you to talk from a CEO and practitioner perspective.
From the hemp perspective, if you're going to use it for the industrial use and for textiles, ropes and clothes and all those other kind of things, there are so many practices for it now that if you have the land, obviously I think that's one of the largest barriers of entry in our communities. We don't own land the way we used to. But if you own land or you can give pieces of land, there is good money there. It's like any other industry though, because the crop is somewhat inexpensive to grow when you're not in a regulated market. You're going to need scale to be able to compete with some of the bigger organizations now that are focused solely on hemp. There's countries now that have shifted some of their economic focus strictly to growing hemp for these reasons. So if you're going to get into it, you got to be an expert. You got to be really good at it, and understand exactly who your clientele is, so that you can be able to check some of those boxes. But it's the barrier of entry is is challenging because now you're dealing with an international market versus a state market or a national market.
Well, I actually, one of the trends that I see in Florida is that we have all these dispensaries popping up, non-cannabis dispensaries, right? Selling Delta 8, selling smoke products. So, smoke shops. It's not called dispensaries, it's called smoke shop. In fact, I have a long-term client since I was in Tallahassee, Up for Less, who is in the general Tallahassee area, and I've done legal work for them. I represented Just CBD and a part of their acquisition from a Canadian company. They got acquired for $160 million. So, and that was just doing Delta 8, right? So, in Delta 8 type products, there is an entire industry built around this. And I think that there are opportunities there. I've seen clients take a hold of it, even in doing business with Viola. Viola just doesn't sell Delta 9 products, so cannabis, truly cannabis flower products. They also they have a CBD division. They have a women's health division, which does deal with some of these non-Delta 8 products. I agree with Mr. Washington in saying that there are issues that you can run into when going into the sub-industries. And the reason why I think that some of these other companies do it and they're successful in it is because they have the money and the bandwidth to fight the government or position themselves in the market so they don't get caught up in shenanigans. It's a lot easier for people lower on the economic scale to get caught up in shenanigans when dealing with these more exotic firm types of things. I tell people all the time, I believe that you should go into it if you can, but you need to have your team right. And a part of your team is a lawyer. And no lawyer is going to do this for like $2,500. It's going to cost thousands of dollars. And I'm not talking about like $5,000. It's going to be $60,000, $100,000, $200,000 a year, something like that, to prevent you from getting in trouble. Because corporate lawyers, especially engaging in the cannabis industry, it's about preventative medicine rather than reactive medicine, because you don't want to get caught up in any drug trafficking, state or federal issues within law that's going to get you tied up and harm your business and harm your person.
Thank you.
Delta 8 is starting to get banned state by state, as you guys are just watching the news. I mean, state by state, they're banning it. They're getting it out of the ecosystem. And Florida, I believe, is starting to do something in the fall, I think, with Delta 8 as well.
Yeah, we're trying to prevent it. Yeah, we're trying to control access, because we've seen a lot of things happening in the synthetic space that's hurting and harming kids. So the legislature and the governor, we're doing our best to protect kids and to reduce access to those products, and of course the way they're marketed. So, Shamari, you want to talk more about it?
Not really, but
I would just love if you guys regulated them and taxed them just the way you all do us regular female plant marijuana growers. That's the only ask that I have.
Now, I'm a huge advocate of regulation. I'm a huge advocate of ensuring that we keep it out of the hands of children, kids, and people who shouldn't have it. But I'm even bigger advocate for business and commerce. And I think that's where this needs to live. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. And if it's better to have access to the actual Delta 9 plant, and the research shows that it's better for the ingesting of products with Delta 9 rather than derivative like the Delta 8 or Delta 10, CBG or anything else, then fine. But then we should be pushing in that direction and also protecting our communities and protecting our children. But we need to do it the right way, and do it the right way in business so that we can scale it we can ensure that folks can be a part of it, right? And then also ensure that we are not harming people that should not have access to it.
But seriously, I'm an epidemiologist by trade, and when you look at the number of calls, so the Poison Center reported that this year they've had over 200 calls of children with THC-related poisonings since the beginning of the year, which is significantly higher than previous years. So when you look at other states like California and Colorado, when they increased the amount of products that was available in the market, and sometimes illegally, like sometimes areas they have a lot of illegal substances, children get into them, and there are a lot of risks with that. These unregulated products are a problem, especially with children. When things are unregulated like that, you know, having the right amount of research to know what to do, how to treat them, how they're gonna interact with children, people with disabilities, etc., is very difficult. So that's why the research side is important, and that's why when you see some of the products that crop up in these smoke shops that students and other people are buying, they are not understanding a lot of these things are not regulated. You don't know what you're getting. They don't have a lab that they are required by law to send these things to. If you remember a few years ago, just to give you an example of unregulated products, when they had the popcorn lung, I was an epidemiologist at the time at the Department of Health. People were dying. They were vaping a product. They didn't know at first which one it was. So, you know, the federal government, state was trying to figure out which product, FDA. I mean, ultimately, it was traced back to a store that was on the internet that people was buying from. It was an unregulated product, and it was ultimately killing people or providing, you know, them with a long-term disability for the rest of their life. When these people are going to these shops with Delta 8 and other things, sometimes when you don't have the regulation on it, people add additives. People do a lot of things that they shouldn't do, and people crop up companies and they do a lot of things like that. You don't have a way to regulate it. So from that standpoint, from a safety standpoint, a lot of this really boils down to safety. It can be just like with this example, one distributor that was creating a product that was being shipped out, and it killed some young people. So with that being said, with the conversations, you're always going to talk about the regulatory aspect. And to bring this conversation really back to recreational marijuana, there will be, based on Florida's history, a heavily regulated process. One thing you can count on, even in the medical marijuana space, highly regulated space, and to the point, high bar of entry, right, into this space, but the regulation on it is very serious. But I do want to give time for some of our other students, and we'll start with this table. Is there anyone at this table with questions?
I gotta jump in for 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay.
You are 100% correct, especially in a state that is ran by Republicans. This industry has a ton of regulations around it, and Republicans typically don't like regulation, because regulations are going to be put in place to help the people with the money who have the licenses, the larger licenses, the more expensive licenses, so that they can ultimately make more money off of it. And it's going to catch the people downscale up more than it's going to catch the people upscale. And that's something that you're going to have to take into consideration when figuring out what is your place in this industry.
Questions at this table? Questions here?
I have a question. So day one, let's just say hypothetically, that the measure passes November. What happens next? Day one, does that mean that I can go buy recreational marijuana and feel safe and free to smoke and do whatever I'd like to do, what I've been doing already? What happens after the next
Well,
day?
once the initiative is done, traditionally in most states, when you have this transition from medical to recreational and you have a dual purpose medical state, the regulations need to be written. And traditionally there's a time frame of usually 6 to 8 months. So if it gets passed in November, I would say probably June 1st or July 1st would probably be the first day you would see recreational sales in the state of Florida. They may, in the interim, because a lot of governors and a lot of legislators get nervous when they do something recreationally. They may allow for possession to be legalized, but the actual purchasing of the product, that's not going to happen on day one.
And so,
Unless Florida's taking a whole different approach.
No, that's what's going to happen. You can't go to the corner boy and buy a pack and then act like it's going to be approved by the government. It's not what happens. Like, you can't go to see whoever on the corner and get some Tylenol. It's not going to happen again. So, possession will be decriminalized ultimately, relatively quickly, but you put yourself at risk on day one if you do anything. And I agree with Mr. Washington. It's going to be July 1st or June 1st when the regulations are set. But in the meantime, it's going to give folks in the commercial space the opportunity to kind of experiment in some sort of ways and set themselves up to reap the benefits of the upcoming legislation we've passed.
So here's the technical, and David, you could speak to this more. We talked about possession. What's your definition of possession being legal after the constitutional amendment, if it passes rather? What's your definition of possession, taking into consideration the very language that the Supreme Court passed, the way it's written, the text of it, and the fact that it specifically, the amendment specifically mentions it has to be purchased from MMTCs. So what's your definition of possession and it being legal in that context?
So there is, so I would couch it in two different ways, because when we think about legality, there's two things. There's civil liability and there's criminal liability. So let's start with the easiest one, which is going to be criminal liability. If the amendment passed on, let's just use random, January 1st or November 7th or something like that. This is the day after the elections. So it passes on that day. If you have some cannabis on you and they stop you in a city or municipality or county or sheriff with that on you, and then you say recreational has been passed, the cop's gonna arrest you or write you a ticket. They're not just gonna let it ride. The definition of possession is very simple in the state of Florida. It's possession. The things that make it illegal, like that make it further illegal, are possession, distribution, the sale of it, and there's certain laws surrounding that. Because there's going to be laws there's laws right now, like selling of drugs within 1,000 feet of school, 1,000 feet of church, so on and so on and so on. So the laws themselves have to change. But the simple possession of something, similar to possession of a firearm, a felon possession of a firearm, you can't touch a firearm. It doesn't matter if you held it for a second to move it from one room to the next while you're moving into your new home. If that gun were to be tested for fingerprints, the fingerprints are on it, you are illegally in possession or were found to be holding a gun illegally when you weren't allowed to. That is possession of a firearm, similar to possession of cannabis. If you have it, just because the law has been passed doesn't mean that the law has changed all the other laws to line up with that yet. So the government's still going to do whatever they want. Now, if they send you to a community court, if they want to write you a civil citation or an ordinance violation or something like that, they may do something like that in a more progressive city like a Broward, a Miami, where you guys are at right now, in Tallahassee and Leon County. Gadsden might be a little different. What's that city? Havana, I think, is right now, or near you guys too. That might be a little different. Destin might be a little different. But possession is possession. And on day one, day two, they're going to follow the law. Day 30, day 40, or 60, when the sheriff's office and and these other companies, or even the AG comes out with, or FDLA, who's already come out with possession plus or smell plus laws, to say that it's too nebulous, there's too much of a nexus. These laws are changing too quickly for us to change it. So we need to see smell or possession plus a scale, plus a wad of cash, plus a gun, plus something that would lead us past the simple possession laws into something more nefarious, like distribution or trafficking. Hopefully that's answers your question.
Yeah,
Yes, it
and
does.
another follow-up too, just so you understand, and for younger people, like one of the biggest concerns I have is, even if this is passed, like people being educated on what you can have, like they're gonna regulate how many ounces you can have at a time, where you can have it. That doesn't mean that you can have it, you'll be able to have it, for example, on a college campus, because they receive federal funds. Is still a Schedule 1 drug. So you will have to know the facts, and even MMERI will be very instrumental in making sure people understand, even if it's recreational, the things that you still cannot do and the things that you can do, because if 18-year-olds think that they'll be able to possess it, that's not the case, right? So there will still be a lot of things that will have to be hashed out. You have a question?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Drasana Pollock. I am a senior here, and in the Health Informatics and Information Management program. I'm probably all over Florida. That's where I'm from. I'm going to leave it there. So my question is, with this, we're here in Tallahassee, and I understand what FAMU is trying to do here in Tallahassee. How do we educate Floridians all over with MMERI, with cannabis, to become business owners? Because there are many people who are out here, have their own respective business illegally. We know that. How do we educate them to say, hey, instead of doing it this way, how about we navigate you to go this way? Is there that space to do that, even if they don't have a degree in food service or land grant or whatever? Is that possible?
So
I think that's what we're engaging in right now.
Okay, go ahead.
And that's what we're engaging in right now. And in fact, that is the mandate for FAMU, is to educate the public about what you are literally talking about. And GP is doing a tremendous job in reaching out throughout the entire state of Florida. I'm in South Florida right now, so he's been up and down the state doing an excellent job in pushing that initiative and getting folks on board and using folks out of state to do it as well. So I commend you, GP, for doing that. But I'm gonna hop off. I'm gonna let everybody else talk.
yeah, and
Because I do have a PowerPoint that's been standing outside, because they don't look like you, let's say, the room I'm about to go into, so I decided to spend a few more minutes with y'all. But let me answer this question, and unfortunately, guys, I got to drop off. But thank you so much, FAMU. Thank you so much, fellow panelists and students, for all your questions. The two pieces there that I'll say is the making everyone aware. That's one, general public, making the general public aware, how they can have access. Now, the second part of it, when you were talking about some of the illegal things that some of the people in other spaces may be doing, how can they get in? That's a whole different conversation. Because when you get into cannabis and cannabis investment, every penny is tracked. So if they cannot track or claim all of the funds that they may have made through illegal activities, it would be the barrier of entry to be an owner or an investor in this industry that bar is almost unsurmountable. They track every dollar. So if they're trying to get into the industry, they want to build their resume and try to figure out a legitimate way, I would say with any of you guys is be humble enough to take entry-level positions. Learn the business from the inside out and come in and leave all your preconceived notions about what you know about the industry at the door and learn this industry. And then when the time is right, and if you do have some investment and some capital, then you can get into ownership. But if you have illegal gotten funds, don't even think about getting into this industry. The government's all over it. They're tracking everything. And if you don't want the IRS or the alphabet boys to knock on your door, you need to make sure that all those dollars are tracked.
Thank you.
Well said, well said. I think David knows about this. Al Harrington was telling a story of what happened to him, even after he got the license and established his business, and he was following state law. And before you knew it, the cops showed up and a lot of things happened, and he lost a lot of money, even though he was doing everything right. And so it's still cannabis that we're talking about. So there are a lot of things, systemic things, that have been put in place to ensure that people that don't got money don't get into it. It's just as simple as that.
And we're gonna work very hard to change that narrative. We're gonna work hard to change that narrative, and it starts with knowledge, like the first step that you're doing today. Like, knowledge is power. Like, you have to understand the industry, you have to do your homework, you have to understand how you can get in, you have to be willing to take some of those entry-level positions so that you can learn the industry inside and out. You have to be a student of the craft, right? Just like you're a student of your major, whatever it is that you want to do, cannabis or anything else, you have to be a student of whatever it is you're trying to do. Taylor, did we answer all of your questions?
Yes, I think you all did a very good job at answering the questions that I came with. And I actually have one more question. With marijuana being recreationally legalized, I want to know, like, what do you think would happen to the street dealers? Like, what does that mean for people who currently sell illegally? What will happen to them?
We still have our attorney on the phone. What do you think, attorney?
We like to call them legacy folks because they've been doing this for a while. And I have some legacy clients in multiple states who are not to be named. But one of the things that I love doing is turning a legacy player into a legitimate player. The reason why you want to do that is it's your transition, right? I mean, I'm a little older, so like I listen to Jay-Z, I listen to all these other like old early 2000s rappers that are talking about selling drugs, and then they get older now. You had Jeezy and T.I. and Jay-Z talking about buying the community and doing this and all these positive things. Well, all of them were selling drugs to the community, selling weed to the community, right? But they went from illegal to legal. And I love helping companies and legacy dealers go from illegal to legal. So that is going to be their pathway. And I want to hit on this again and again and again. This is a conversation, in my opinion, about business. This is not just a conversation about continuing education, how to further educate the public, because I think both those things are necessary. But this conversation, the best way in a capitalist country, a capitalist society, to make the change and affect the change that you want to make, especially in this industry, where we see and have folks like Killer Mike saying part of reparations can be literally putting aside the cannabis industry for the people who have been affected by it most, which is Black folks in this country. So we can explore those types of things. So that's from a policy perspective. But as we're moving on different ends of the scale, right? Because every culture, ethnicity, doesn't matter. Everyone in this country, there is a time between business and politics. I told you guys about my political background and also being a prosecutor. My business background started at age 17. I had my first multi-million-dollar business within 5 years. We had $15 million within 5 years in the DMV distributing paper. But I come from California. I grew up in Compton for a little bit. I got older, I was in New Orleans, and we came through DMV, and we lived in the hood in Oxon Hill, if you know where that's at, in Maryland, right outside DMV. I lived on H Street before it became such a hot, a gentrified area where it is now. So I have a connection to the middle class, as well as the lower middle class, as well as hopefully getting rich and learning some more things and seeing some other things. The reason I say that is because the thing that is going to push our community and any community forward and any political agenda forward is the business side. Anything is going to, which is money, and anything that is going to push the business side forward is understanding the regulations and in this particular industry, the science behind it. So we need to have everything in the scale, everything from politics to business to research to science, all of it covered so that we can benefit from it. I think that FAMU is an excellent jumping off point to do that. So again, hopefully that answered your question, because as a lawyer, sometimes that can be a most long go off track.
Respond to her question as well. What you would see as part of it, my background, law enforcement, and being a part of a national intelligence team, and we studied Colorado. When you start legalizing recreational, you will see that there will be a lot of buzz going on because they do want to try to clean the market out first. But these criminals are not going to go away. They will find other ways to make money. Your carjackings are going to go up. Your home invasions are going to go up. There are other markets that sales to teenagers are going to go up because they're going to still try to put their product out there regardless. So what you will also, and we got to be careful with, even with Florida, we got to keep in mind that Florida set the bar at 60% as far as voting, 60% approval. Only 3 other states have ever done that. That's Maryland, Arizona, and New Jersey. Other states who did pass it, if it wasn't through a mandate, it was done with 50% approval above. So we got to be careful of saying that it's going to happen. So we got to plan for both sides of it. And if we do pass it here in Florida, there's another piece of legislation that's going along with it that is going to cap the THC content to 30 to 60%, which is going to make the illicit market even more important. Because if I'm gonna buy a product and I'm only getting a mild amount of high out of it, I'm gonna look for that next high if that's what I'm looking for. So they're gonna keep that supply going. So not necessarily the illicit market is gonna go away whenever they do recreation, if it does become recreational later.
It's not going to go away. People are still going to sell. As a former prosecutor, I know that. The goal is to move them from people who want to be people who want to be legitimate. You have to want to not only do it, but then you have to engage the right folks to do it. Go in the legacy market, go from a legacy street dealer to a legitimate dealer. And you want to stay away from the illegitimate stuff because that is going to harm your ability to legitimize later. Because a lot of the stuff that they're giving or allowing folks the grace to get into the industry because of a background that they may have had, it's not going to go on forever. It's only going to go on for a little bit, and then they're going to stop that because they're going to feel as though they've tapped out on those resources. You should already know not to sell and not to sell in this capacity.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. Criminals are one of the most brilliant people you've ever met. They got time, and they will get creative, okay? Think about alcohol. How many flavors of alcohol do you have? A ton. You say this one is illegal, we flavor it and give it a different, it's not the same thing, it's different. So somebody could even get the marijuana legally and say, hey, here's this substance, you could lace it and get a different kind of high, and people are going to do it. So education is going to be critical, and that's what we're trying to do here. It doesn't matter what the landscape is, we still need to educate our people to understand that, hey, you can still get in trouble. And when we're talking about getting into the industry and the barriers to entry and all that, it makes it look like it's impossible to get in, but our panelists have made it clear, hey, there's the research side of it where you could help advance the science, and there's the capitalist side of it where you could actually get in the business or ancillary businesses. I'm a lawn, I operate a lawn business. I'm an accountant. David's got a law firm, And, Gibran says, hey, David, I need your services. David is not in the cannabis industry, but Gibran is. And so there are different angles, logistics. We were in a meeting with the CEO of TrueLeaf, and she said, logistics is huge. You can help, if you can help us train your students in logistics, we'll take them. It's a big business. What does UPS do? FedEx? DHL? Logistics. Are they still in business? Yes.
And a lot of the MMTCs, when I went and visited, and they say, meet our logistics director, they would say things like, I was the former logistics director for Bluebell Ice Cream. Like, a lot of those people came from other industries. They said, I manage, like, I saw one lady, she was the logistic person when that farm grew tomatoes, and she had legacy with the farm in their operations there before they bought it, but she switched from tomatoes over to cannabis when they acquired the property. So people who have backgrounds in logistics, emergency management people are some experts in logistics too. You see a lot of people that they do, just field migration. So they go from one field to the next because they can make a lot more money in cannabis during the same skill set. So just a lot to know.
And so
understanding what logistics is, like, it's one of those words that people are like, all right, cool, logistics. What does that mean? But and you guys can expand on this, but it's not just transporting one from one place to the other. It's understanding your distribution lines. It's understanding, like, as you said with the young woman you're discussing about tomatoes and turning tomato farm to a cannabis farm. You have to understand how the landscape of that particular farm works so that you can get it to a place, ensure that they can get it. You also, the law touches it, which is like FOB, freight on board. What does that mean? Understanding the contracts surrounding it as well. Like, there's different parts of the logistics, the economy of logistics, or even understanding what logistics is and where you fit into it. So a logistics director is extremely important, especially once you're good at it. Once you're good at it, you can expand entire counties. In what I did with delivering newspapers in the DMV, where we made a ton of money, it was logistics. We serviced essentially from Tallahassee to Jacksonville in delivering newspapers. That's a wide swath area. So if you're able to do something like that and understand the logistics of the business, of your state, of the surrounding area, you make yourself, as Mr. Washington said, invaluable to a company.
Yeah, I went to a meeting the other day. Supposed to be a cannabis meeting. When I got there, I was looking for industry experts, CEOs possibly, and it wasn't there. It was a real estate agent. It was an individual there who had a janitorial service. I was like, well, what are you doing here? This is not who I came to meet. She said, the real estate agent said, my primary job, I switched from doing home and personal home to commercial real estates for MMTCs alone. And she's made $1 million doing that. Just finding properties for these guys to sell MMTC. And I was like, okay, so what did the janitorial service do? Oh, she goes in and she cleans those MMTCs. So she's making a couple $100,000 off of that.
That's cool.
So there are ancillary positions and jobs that we don't even think about that this industry needs. And it's just like when you're building a house, when you're looking for a house, you can do one or two things. You can either build that house or you can find a house already built. This industry is a house that's unbuilt. So there are different things, different components that this industry needs that is not being put in place right now. And whatever idea you got, it's not too far-fetched. So there are other ways that we can get into this that we need to look at and that we need to, because that was eye-opener for me. Seeing that.
I think I want to mention some good news too. Florida A&M we're well positioned. We've got a number of entities that are interested in doing research with us. In other words, research that benefit our faculty and our students. Bringing you guys into this space. The Florida Medical Marijuana Trade Association is one of those entities. There are other MMTCs, CEOs of cannabis companies that are interested in coming to Florida A&M to work with us to do research. We're talking about not just research for the purpose of doing research with the aim to advance the field, create jobs for the students that will be involved, and better, the field. So you're not just someone sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, I was a part of it. You're actually in it, and the opportunity is there. And so you're in the right place. The question now becomes being willing to, follow through. Nobody said it's going to be easy. I can't sit here and tell you it's easy. Ask Gibran, ask David, hey, how many sleepless nights? They probably still don't sleep right now, so.
You go to lay down, wake up early. That's nice. It's important that your learned talents as well as your implicit talents that you have in anything that you definitely need to have that Mamba mentality. Have that mentality that if this is what you want to do, you have to stay with it. The one panelist, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, the law enforcement officer, he's 100% correct about the person that he met. It's ingenious, and in fact, it's kind of, when I said earlier, go in a different direction, everyone's going here, go in a different direction. He's 100% correct. All of my friends right now, they're doing personal injury, they're doing criminal law, they're doing things like that they naturally can make money from, which is tried and true. I do business. And a secret that many people don't know is the reason why I started my company with the business that I started with in corporate law was because of cannabis. My first client was a cannabis client. And it's corporate, regulatory, as well as we do two other things. Cannabis law, if you go to our website, cannadyanassociates.com, we say we do three things. Corporate law, cannabis law, and real estate. Why real estate? Because the same exact thing they said in that Mr. Washington was talking about. It's cultivation, it's a land. They're not making any more land, right? So we need to find land, we need to find investors that want to invest in the land. And on the corporate side, we deal with securities, mergers and acquisitions. We deal with structuring and setting up businesses, trusts, understanding how these things play together in a traditional business sense, but also how it sticks to cannabis in a unique way, and taking those unique aspects of cannabis and putting it into business. We've worked with some of the larger, not only distributors, but dispensaries as well, like Jardines in Las Vegas. It's a huge company that folks try to mimic. Or the Flowery in Jacksonville, they do a very good job at marketing their products and also presenting their products in a way. But we work with them on their corporate side, the real estate side, because they have to use the license. They want to expand their business, where to expand, how to expand, what markets to get into, what cities can not have a medical marijuana distribution center at currently until we go adult rec. So things like that are going to be important. That's why understanding the business itself is just as important as understanding the flower or the trends or anything else.
Alrighty, well, we have 2 questions, and we'll see if we have any more, and we'll wrap up.
Greetings, my name is Vanetta Hall. I'm a 4th-year criminal justice scholar from Tampa, Florida, by way of Portsmouth, Virginia. And I know you touched base on saying that if a person came to you saying that they wanted to go from selling marijuana illegal to legal, what would be some first steps that they can take?
So Portsmouth, that's awesome. Clips were from that Clearwater area. I'm not Clearwater. That's Florida. I forget what it's called.
St. Pete?
What were you saying?
Is it St. Pete? Tampa, St. Pete?
No, she said Portsmouth, Virginia, right?
That's where I was born, yes, sir. Tampa,
Yeah,
Florida,
yeah.
from Portsmouth, Virginia.
Yeah, I got a lot of family down there, in Portsmouth, Virginia. But Legacy, the first thing I would say is they need to get a lawyer, literally. That is the first thing that they need to do, because the lawyer is, and not just any lawyer. You need to have a lawyer that understands the industry, but also understands business. There's only one of me in the entire state. Nobody else does what I do, period, end of story, in the state of Florida. I've looked for it, they don't. There are people on the criminal justice side, there are advocates. There's no one that does the business portion that I do. The only ones that do are like Green School Mart, who are large law firms, or Gray Robinson trying to get to the industry. But from a legacy perspective and helping folks out, the number one thing that they need to do is get a lawyer. The reason why they need to get a lawyer is that lawyer needs to assess where they're at and what they're doing. They also need to have money. They just can't be somebody who never saved $1 of their legacy funds, because it's not going to work. As Mr. Washington said, to get to the industry, especially in Florida being the number 3 highest revenue generating state in the entire country behind California and Colorado, then it's Florida and we're only medical marijuana, then there's that. But then there's also going to other states as well if your legacy in setting up a legitimate spot in those horizontally integrated recreational or adult use areas before coming down to Florida.
And then my second question was, what educational or professional routes that they could take if they're not a student already?
Legacy folks or just anybody?
Just anyone.
Ask your question one more time.
What educational or professional routes that they could take to start getting educated or to start trying to make their business from illegal to legal?
So for anybody, I would say something that we spoke about earlier, try to get into areas and look at areas that are non-traditional to cannabis, but help cannabis move forward. So real estate, not as a real estate agent, but as someone who understands real estate from a legal perspective, an investor's perspective, because investors' interests are different from residential folks who are just buying a house, their interest, or even commercial developers. So investors are very important to look into security. When I say security, I mean that in 2 ways. Security in securing the facility, because currently there are regulations in hemp and in cannabis where you have very specific security measures that you must adhere to. And then I would say the security money. Money is considered a security. It's a legal term for money. And any, like the Canadian dollar is a security, Mexican peso is a security, the American dollar is a security. Like, you need to be able to talk to people with money to see how they can deploy their money. There's a sneaky thing as well that a lot of folks don't know, especially people that look like us, is there are companies out there that need to get money off their books every year. If they do not get money off their books, then they're susceptible to tax burdens and tax laws. The people who invest with them are going to pull their money from them. There are multiple reasons why there are this kind of large swaths of money on the street, and it needs to be put in other areas. So legacy folks, as well as people who are just want to get into the industry, understand where money comes from, how money works, how investment works as well, how business structures work. Areas I would consider going into would be law, science, the medical profession as well, and not just general business, but entrepreneurship and understanding what entrepreneurs do and how they think. So even if you aren't going to be an entrepreneur, you can help an entrepreneur scale their business in a very in a way in which they can understand it. So those are some of the areas I think that you can start from an educational perspective. But if you already have a legacy business, you need to talk to a lawyer. And don't talk to your criminal lawyer. You talk to a business owner. If you want to reach out to me, you can. And I'm not talking about you just anybody.
Look, he said like you talking like you know somebody that knows somebody.
It's really funny because especially our culture, we speak in a certain way, and we speak in a certain way because we understand the voices that are out there. But when you transition, and remember, the Rockefellers and the Kennedys weren't doing legal business their entire life. There's a reason why we have a constitutional amendment, two amendments, one about alcohol that banned it, and another one that brought it back and said that it's legal because the country was going to consume it, and there were individuals participating in that underground industry, and we need to bring our underground folks above ground, and we need to position them to monetarily reap the benefits of the knowledge that they currently have and position them in legal spaces rather than the illegal space. And what is the number one tool to do that? A lawyer. And a lawyer that knows what they're doing. Not just someone that helped them get out of the spot, but someone that understands what is necessary for them to not only make that dollar, but make that dollar in a legal way. And that doesn't always mean it's going to come as fast as it came in the illegal way. They need to probably build up to the point where it can come that fast, but they got to spend that money so that they can engage the industry in the proper way. And I work with a company named Delicioso. They have a deal with True Leaf right now, excuse me. Mr. DeLisi, he lives in Florida, and he is the longest serving or longest sentenced person in the entire United States federally. I believe it was like 60 or 90 or something ridiculous for cannabis distribution. And he now owns a company called Delicioso, and it's distributed in Florida under True Leaf, and they have specific SKUs for them. So turning that legacy dealer into a legitimate dealer is not something that is a secret. It is not something that needs to be shied away from. It can be done. You just need to have the right connections. You need to have the right people in place, and I would suggest you have the right accountants and lawyers in place to ensure that you are above board in everything.
And my last question is, for the legacy folks who do want to come illegal to legal, if they are wanting to go above the ground and get educated and make their business legal, but they already may have been convicted of distribution or trafficking charges, what could we do for them, or what would be able to be done for them?
So you're going to need to go to
You talking like she got a client for you.
the answer is get a lawyer. That is the first answer. I'm telling you right now. And
they gonna talk about
the
everything.
reason why you need to get a lawyer is because there's nuances to all of this. So check it out. So if we go to New York, if we go to Jersey, if we go to Maryland, there are barriers of entry, lower barriers of entry on the recreational side for the individual to get grandfathered in because they literally have those things, those convictions. So it's a little different, but it's different from what goes on in Florida. So, and you also have to think about the political perspective. So again, earlier I said there's the business portion and the political portion, and they all work together. You're talking about Jersey, Maryland, and New York, who are historically ran by Democrat governors, but they may have a Republican legislature. But even if they have a Republican legislature, they have to work with the Democrats, or vice versa. Down here in Florida, we've had at least 30 years of a Republican or independent who has been in the governor's seat and then a fully Republican legislature. So they're not going to have the same welcoming mentality of individuals who are considered legacy. But does that mean that legacy folks cannot have a position not touching the flower, or a security position in a company that also may not touch the flower, to engage with a cannabis company or engage with a company, whether medical or recreational, that has not been tapped yet, or that has been tapped, but there's a way to get in it. There is a way for people to get in the industry, but you need to get with people with the knowledge to be able to help you down that path. Because if you can't walk that path and you run into a landmine, that landmine is going to be a lot bigger and a lot louder than some folks that do have lawyers and do have accountants and do have the political backing and do have the connections and do have the money and we're born into things that the legacy dealer may not be born into as well. Or even the person, like I said, Puff for Less. They were a client. Amanda, she owns Puff for Less. Go ask her about it. She's probably in the Lawrence shop today. But she positioned herself she's a non-white business owner who did not go to college, when her friends went to college, and started a business with her mother. And she's been very successful in her business. However, and I spoke to her about this, positioning herself to take advantage of distributing as a dispensary recreationally as the laws change in cannabis. But she wouldn't have known these things unless she's spoken to the right people and individuals about it. You can read the law, but you may not understand the law. You may not understand the things that the regulations that will be or likely will be surrounded in those laws. You don't know where your barrier of entry is. And until you talk to somebody that can help you down that path, then it's going to prevent you from doing it the right way. Let me give you I'm going to say one last thing. I'm a hip hop guy, 100%, all day long. And one of the stories that I love comes from No Limit, Master P. Master P said biggest artist at the time when he was coming up was Michael Jackson. So he wanted to know how Michael Jackson got to where he was. So he called Michael Jackson's attorney, and his attorney said something along the lines of, I'll talk to you for an hour, but I'm not talking to you. I think he said, you got to give me $30,000 or $40,000 to sit down and talk to you. He was like, 30 or 40,000 grand just to talk to you. He was like, yeah. And the reason he did it was very specific. He wanted to talk to him about how to be in the industry and how to make that Michael Jackson kind of money. He ain't got time to be talking to you, at number one, and he didn't even charge him $20,000. But the knowledge that he got was over $20,000 worth of knowledge, because it was about distribution lines. He said, it's not about getting a deal. It's about getting distribution. You already have the albums. You already have Silk Shocker, Murder C, yourself, all these other people making money in New Orleans and in California and the Richmond area, like doing these things. But now what you need is a distribution deal. You don't need to deal with the major to take all your stuff. So when he went to see Jimmy Iovine in California, and Jimmy Iovine said, "I give you $1 million to sign No Limit to Interscope Records," and he said, "No, thank you." And Jimmy Iovine said, "If you walk out of this building, I'll make sure you never do business in this town again." And he, before Cash Money, was able to get a distribution deal that was more lucrative than anyone else has seen in hip hop up until that time, which allowed Baby and Biggs to go and get their type of deal and see it work on their distribution side as well. So there's always a barrier of entry that you could get into. But who did he see first? He saw a lawyer who knew what he was doing and knew how to actually get it done. And that is the importance of message. You got to go talk to the right people. And if you're a legacy guy, and Master V is a legacy guy, one of those Jay-Z, Killer Mike, TIGZ types that turned legacy into legitimacy. And what did they do? Or at least what did Master V do? He did it when, after speaking to a lawyer, he was able to execute. Because that's the last portion of it. After you get the knowledge, you have to execute. And there's not a lot of people out there that can execute. You can talk the game, you can get the knowledge. If you can't execute, there's no purpose for what you're doing. You're spinning your wheels.
Thank you so much for your time.
And David, just to, David and everyone, just to put it in context, she's a criminal justice and psychology. That's the perspective she's coming from. It's not like not that she's got a deal on the side. Okay?
No. And I did hear you say criminal justice.
So
Just get a lawyer, GP.
yeah, so
Just get a lawyer before you
get a
go.
lawyer. So David, let me ask you to address something.
You be the lawyer.
Let me ask you to address something. I know, based off of the questions that she's asked, do you want to speak to being a venture capitalist and also about investing, in public traded cannabis companies? One of those two has a lower barrier to entry. So, and we don't really talk much about it when we're talking about getting a foothold in the cannabis industry. You want to speak to that?
Yes, so, and I'll try to make it quick, but as you can see, I don't make anything quick. So the investor class in America is a class that we really need to get into as Black and brown folks in this country. And I'm going to start simply with the publicly traded ones. If you have a portfolio, you want to consider some companies that do trade in cannabis already or that are set up for it. Philip Morris, for instance. After that big Budweiser thing with the trans lady coming out saying that she supported Bud Fat or Bud Light or something like that, and then a bunch of companies started dropping. Budweiser lost money and sold off a piece of their division to Philip Morris. Philip Morris deals in cigarettes and alcohol. So I think they own Marlboro, so Marlboro Lights and stuff like that. They also own like Coors, I think, and Miller Lite and stuff like that. But they're clearing a lot of their books to get into the cannabis industry, because that's kind of like where part of the technical investment industry is going. Who's going to make the money? And I have on IG, I got a thing about this, but also I wrote an article about this, which is who's going to make more money in the industry? Is it going to be recreational side, dealing with companies like your Philip Morris's and your Budweiser and your cigarette companies, transitioning and buying legitimate companies and consolidating the industry, or the recreational industry, or is it going to be big pharma and how they deal with it? These are two different industries, and the investment class is really having debates over this on CNN, CSNBC, and Bloomberg and Fox News, places and Fox Business, places where you should be listening to on a daily or weekly basis to understand how money works. So CSNBC, Bloomberg Music, Bloomberg, or Fox Business, so that you can understand what's going on. Now, on the private money investment side, venture capital, private money just coming out of family offices and things like that. Understand what a family office is. Understand what venture capital and venture money is. Do some research on Robert Smith. Do some research on investing and who's investing in cannabis. If you have the opportunity to go to MJ Biz Con in Vegas. They do it every year because investors go there and sit in on their investment conferences that they do. When we talk about monetary barriers to entry and getting the knowledge, there's the money side and then there's the knowledge side. So the money side is the money side. It's people with money, right? So down here, we've done business with the original family that started Patron, the ex-wife of the owner, of the original owner lives down here, and she got a large settlement in the divorce from Patron. And she's hangs out at the beach and sits in her mansion and has money and she doesn't know what to do with it. She goes talk to people like my partners and myself, just as friends and as business folks, like, well, what are the trends? What am I looking at? And cannabis is one of them. I even have articles and stuff about cannabis versus crypto and why I believe currently that cannabis is a safer investment than crypto currently. Not saying that crypto isn't a good entry point to invest in. I think currently cannabis is better. But you gain that knowledge is extremely important. If you go to MJ Biz, spend a couple $100 on a flight and a couple $100 sitting in those meetings and asking the questions that you're asking. Not be afraid to ask those questions when the whole room is faces that don't look like ours. GP knows, everybody in that panel knows who's of a certain age. The majority of rooms that we've been in don't have faces that look like our faces. We're in an all-black room right now, all-black and brown room right now. There's not many, if any, that I've been in that have conversations like that. They all look different. You need to have the thing inside of you that family does give you to sit and ask an intelligent question that is formed in a well-articulated sentence so that they can answer the question and you can get out of it what you need from it so you can go to the next meeting, you talk to the next person, you can leverage that information for something else. So using a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 to go to Vegas to sit in those meetings and walk around the showroom floor and meet folks and shake hands and make those network connections to do it. So those are areas, hopefully, GP, I'm answering your question and not in a broad way, in the public traded space as well as the private money space, in not only connecting with folks, but making sure you're talking to the right investment groups that invest in cannabis. Because some won't touch it until federal regulations come down. Even Philip Morris and those guys, they're not touching as much investing until the feds do it. And the feds might not do it until the Dems, like either Biden's second term or right at the end of Biden's term or something like that. And I've written articles on that too in newspapers about smart Republicans. If they were smart, they would make cannabis an issue so that they can, like Marco Rubio, to position himself to run for president or maintain his position in the Senate, specifically positioning himself in the cannabis industry so that he can engage with the investment class as that grows, because investors are not investing in it because of the lack of federal regulation around it, because more of the regulation is state-based.
Thank you, David.
Well, I think we're good. We're good? Good, Taylor? Thank you, Taylor. And again, thank you, everyone this has been I don't know how to describe this conversation. I'm going to have to unwrap all of it over today and tomorrow. But thank you so much, David, and thank you. I don't know if he's still here or not. I think he had to break off. Yeah, he's gone. And I was just thanking you. If you're still here, thank you for participating and for sharing your knowledge, imparting your knowledge and experience. And I hope we can all not just internally consume it, but it turns into action, whether it's action in educating, action and getting around the state and making sure people understand the industry and how it operates and what it entails and what is required, to just knowing how they can get access to the industry. And from what we've learned here today, there is access and there are opportunities to be gained. So again, thank you everyone. I think this is a very productive conversation that we should not just have a one-off, but continue it, especially leading up to the November ballot decision and beyond.
I think to piggyback on what you said, piggybacking all day long, I'm going to give everybody my information. Taylor, please, if you want to reach out, or anybody else, a young lady from Portsmouth, if you want to reach out, info@KennedyandAssociates.com. It's on the shirt here, Kennedy and Associates. So Kennedy, A&D Associates.com is the website. You can reach me at info@KennedyandAssociates.com, or you can reach out and text me at 954-707-0530. And I would love...
She didn't get that. Oh, you got to see that. I know what you're trying to do, but you got to hurry. You got to slow it down just a little bit.
No problem. I'll say it again. 954-707-0530. Shoot me a text. If I don't get it, my legal paralegal will get it, and she'll make sure I get it.
Hey, David, could you repeat it again? Including
including
your bank account number?
Oh, yeah, and the routing number. You don't worry about that. 954-707-0530. Or you can reach me by email at info@KennedyandAssociates.com. CANNADY and A&D Associates with an S.com. And the young woman with the FAMU cardigan on, I've been trying to figure out your name the entire time because I want to talk to you.
Shamario Robertson, and my email is sroberson, ROBERSON, at dsrconsultant, no S.com. And my email is my phone number is 850-980-6394, 850-980-6394.
And what's your email address again, Ms. Robinson?
I'm sending it to you right now through text. It's srobertson at dsrconsultant.com.
We're going to provide all of y'all the university's account number so y'all can write us a check. FAMU is accepting donations. Thank you for supporting.
I'm always excited to do work with FAMU. I've said it from the beginning. And from a network perspective, I'm going to tell you guys, like, I was listening to the Breakfast Club back in 2015. I heard Al Harrington say, who hit Viola, they're a client of mine, largest cannabis owner in the entire country. I heard him say, I am working with FAMU to blah, 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 blah. And he said, I wanted to make X amount of millionaires within, I think he said 15 to 20 years or something like that. When I talk about networking, I was a prosecutor at the time. I was sitting in my office. I was working and listening to the Breakfast Club. And the first thing I did was I literally called his company. And I heard Berner say something about that too. Berner, who owns Cookies, or was the originator of Cookies, another rapper, listening to the Breakfast Club. He said, I want to do X, Y, Z. I called California. I was like, I want to talk to Berner. And I was like, I know he's probably not there. I know he's probably not the person I should talk to. And I know this is the shop, cookie shop. But I'm an attorney. I'm this, I'm that. I want to be in the business of X, like of cookies. Like reach out, whatever. Like when you want something, go get it. I don't care who they are.
When they came to town for the first business meeting on that sale, I was the deputy secretary at the time. I came over from the COVID center, and that was one of the only in-person meetings that I took, is that Cookies transaction meeting when I was in that position, and Christian Bax used to be an old colleague of mine. He was working with cookies at the time, so we should connect.
You definitely should connect. Like the clients that I have, I'm telling you, all students that are there, everybody is there. I've never walked through the front door of anything. I don't know why God has said, "Hey, David, you're never going to walk through the front door." But I just don't walk through the front doors. I go through side doors, I go through back doors. I come in through the top like 007 or something. But when I when I want something, and maybe this is just me and the way that I was raised and people telling me I couldn't do something, but when people say I can't do something, or when I see that I want to do something, then I make the intention to do it, but I also do it in a way that I believe is appealing to both parties, to myself as well as the person that I'm coming to speak to. Because you don't want to come with your hand out, you want to come with something. That's why you never, if you're dating a young woman, if you're dating a young man, you never come and meet their parents or meet somebody else without a gift in your hand and saying thank you and I presenting myself as well as being able to provide something. So same in business. I always come with something, an ability to assist. My ability is from the legal perspective and from the commerce and business perspective as well. So one of the things I implore you to do is reach out to people even if you don't think they can be reached out to. I'm going to give you some people that you should reach out to real quick too, who are in Florida. The Flowery, it's in Florida. Reach out to them. They're looking for interns. They're looking for folks. You should reach out to Rap Snacks. If you don't know what Rap Snacks is, do your own research. Rap Snacks Foundation too. Reach out to them. They position themselves not just as a chip and snack company, but what they really are is a research company, an investment company for Black businesses. They've invested in the first not speed car, but like mega car, which is first mega car, which was built by a Black man, and they invest money into it. You should reach out to these companies because they have the ability to connect you with other people. You should reach out to people in Florida and outside of Florida. There's so much wealth and Black wealth in Florida, in knowledge in Florida that we do not tap into. So I would suggest that people at FAMU, students at FAMU, professors and administrators at FAMU, that if this is something that you want to pursue, reach out to myself, reach out to Ms. Robinson, reach out to other people on the panel, Mr. Washington, reach out to GP to get their information because GP knows everybody. So you can engage with these individuals and bring something to the table, whether it's your ability to work for free, research for free, or your ability to do something for them and in turn get something from them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give our panelists a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you all so much for taking the time. It's a Saturday. You could be doing anything else on Friday, Saturday, but you spent it with us, and we truly appreciate you. Please keep in touch. It's a journey, not a race, and we want to take it with you. And 2-3 years from now, when you're behind a mic talking, we want to share those beautiful stories with you, how far you've grown. So we have high expectations for you, and we want to support you to get there. So thank you so much, and God bless you all. Thank you.